so this is a Polaroid that I got when I was taking a picture of N.W.A for a book I was doing, and it was way back in 1990, and they'd just come out with that song Fuck the Police, which was very controversial at the time, and I went to LA to knocked on their door where they were recording and dragged them outside into this alley. They were not that keen on having their picture taken, but anyway, it's probably one of the, well, obviously Eazy-E's still alive, and I love the fact that he wrote Janette, Stay Sweet, Eazy-E on Polaroid. I think it's brilliant. And right after I took this shot, I went onto the street just around the corner and flagged down a police car just at random and made them stand in front of it, and I don't think the cops knew who they were, and they were all, everybody was a bit nervous, but I got a shot of them standing in front of the police car as their Fuck the Police song was causing all this controversy. And here is a picture of me with Andre 2000 and Big Boy from Outkast, and their record, their first Hey Ya was just about to come out, and it was so brilliant. I remember being in the studio, I think I was shooting it for Spin magazine, and I was shooting everything on 4x5, so I was obsessed at the time with my 4x5. And they would just, the record hadn't come out yet, and I remember them playing Hey Ya, and I was like, wow, this is just a massive hit. I just knew it was a hit. It was just so infectious, like nobody could stop singing it. And I love the way, like, Andre 2000 just, you know, there's no stylists involved here. Like, Andre 2000 just came looking like this, and like these pants I think he made. I mean, he just is a very stylish guy. And Big Boy's, you know, got his hip hop style. Very cool, chill people. It was a great shoot. Here's a contact sheet from my first ever exposure to hip hop. Well, my real exposure, full-on exposure, when African Bambaataa came to London on this tour, and I think it was the first time they'd been to London, and they had like break dancers and graffiti artists and double Dutch girls and rappers and scratchers, and it was just the most amazing show, and it was in the theatre right by Victoria Station, and basically everywhere I pointed my camera was just the most incredible looking people that you just hadn't seen before, you know, Buffalo Homeboys, and you know, like double Dutch girls, and just this one contact sheet. There's so many shots on here that turn out to be, you know, just by coincidence, great shots. Fab Five Freddy and Rammellzee, and then here is Futura, the famous graffiti artist, and here's Futura and D.ST by a trash bin. I mean, just, you know, it's just great. Every shot is great, and the style is so amazing. I think this is Grandmaster D.ST mixing. I mean, just, it's amazing to get so many shots that are really still interesting, God knows how many years later, because this was probably 1981. You know, to this day, they're just kind of iconic. And here is a contact sheet for a very famous photo shoot that I did, which is Run DMC in 1984, by which time I'd moved to New York. And the Face magazine, you know, see, I used to work for the Face a lot in the, you know, in the good early years of the Face. And they were like, Janette, there's all these new hip hop groups, you're in New York, can you, you know, spend a few days going around taking pictures? And they gave me like a couple of phone numbers, and I had to phone up Run DMC, which, you know, I'd heard of them, but they weren't big yet. So I went out to meet them at where they lived in Hollis, Queens. I went on the subway with my Hasselblad, which I only ever had one lens and a couple of backs. I never really had a lot of stuff. And I got these shots that some people have said are pretty iconic because they're so early of Run DMC. And they're just naturally posing. I'm not one to pose my subjects anyway. I like people to arrange their own bodies. So it, you know, just the styles, what they're wearing, the hats, the Kangols, you know, the sneakers, the tiny little mixing board. It's just, I don't know, I think maybe this is one of my most favourite shoots ever. Just a kind of real moment in time. Okay, here's a picture of Keith Richards that I took. Now, from a kid, I was always a massive Rolling Stones fan, and when you're a kid in England back in the 60s, you know, you could either be a Rolling Stone fan or you'd be a Beatle fan. It was kind of one or the other-ish. and I always chose the Rolling Stones. I thought they were more rebellious, and my mum hated them, so obviously there's much more reason to love them. So finally, you know, 1991, I actually get to meet Keith Richards, my hero. Very, very exciting. And he was just being interviewed in this room in New York for some Brit magazine, I don't remember what. The whole interview, I was basically just sitting on the side taking pictures while he was being interviewed. And it was amazing because he had a glass of whiskey and he had cigarettes. And there was always, like, he was either drinking or he had a cigarette in his mouth. But I kind of love this picture. I just think he just looks so Keith, so hardcore. You know, I'm still a massive fan. And anyone who doesn't know should read that bio, because his bio is really good. Here's just a contact sheet of the Clash, which I photographed at, I think, Acklam Hall in Notting Hill Gate, and something like 1979 maybe, and it was just the most fabulous concert. I mean, everybody loved the Clash. Clash was sort of everybody's favourite band at the time. They're just, like, amazing. And I never knew till I went to I pretty much had when I moved to New York, I kind of took all my nags with me, and I had them in boxes in the basement. And one day a friend of mine, Julie, who was running a photo agency at the time, was like, what's in those boxes then? And we started to pull them out, and she's like, do you realise you have a picture of Joe Strummer with Jimmy Percy on stage? I mean, I didn't even know, I didn't even remember, because you'd sort of I shoot 2 or 3 bands a week for Melody Maker, so I didn't even remember who the hell was in any of these pictures. And she's like, this is amazing, and that was sort of started me really archiving my stuff. Anyway, so here they are live, passionate, amazing. Paolo Hewitt, the writer, he was working on Melody Maker, and he was friends with Paul Weller, and he arranged for Paul Weller to meet his idol Pete Townsend, and this was the very first time they met. I mean, literally 5 seconds before I took this picture, they just said hello on the side of the street, and we arranged for them to meet outside the Marquee Club in Soho. So I was there with my Hasselblad, trusty Hasselblad, film loaded, ready to go, and they just, I mean, I love this picture. I think it really says a lot, because Weller is just, you know, looks so good in his pinstripe suit, immaculate, you know, just standing there, just looks brilliant. And Townsend looks a little disheveled, but you know, it's Townsend, so it doesn't really matter. And they called this the punk, I think the Punk and the Modfather, I think was the headline. It was a cover for Melody Maker, and I don't know, it's maybe one of the favourite pictures I ever took. It's another one, just a kind of classic moment in time. Here's a picture of these guys. They're called Chaka and Dugbem, and they're actually AKA the Islington Twins, and I used to teach in a school that was in Clerkenwell. I used to be the photography teacher, believe it or not. I'd just come out of college, and one day I came out of class and I was just going to lunch, and I had my Yashica mat, which was my camera I had, my 2¼ camera, around my neck as usual. I just see these 2 guys standing, you know, against, it's probably the toilets or something, looking so stylish. I mean, identical twins. You know, they've both got parkas on, trilbies, immaculate, they've got lokes, they've got white socks, sunglasses, and I hadn't seen these guys around in college at all, so I was like, do you mind if I take a picture of you? And they just posed, and a few years later I found out they were living around the corner from me, and I photographed them again. And in I think it's the 1st or 2nd issue of The Face, they ran one of these pictures, you know, because The Face magazine was all about, you know, being the face, like the most stylish street style people, and I showed Nick Logan this picture and he thought it was amazing, so I did a little interview with them, and they ran in one of the very first issues. At the latter end of punk, New Wave started, and there was a club called the Blitz, which was around the corner from my studio in London, and I was friends with the people that ran it, and I knew Boy George and Steve Strange and all these people, so, you know, it was only right that I went there, I think maybe for the Face magazine, and here's my contact sheet of that night to take pictures. And it was amazing, because this club, people used to really dress up, and they had the new wave hairdos, and it was a whole different, it was a kind of almost an anti-punk thing. And I think that's Julia. She was very famous right here. There's Toby Anderson. He was in that amazing band Funkopolitan that had a brief, short, fabulous run. He was a friend of mine. These guys are just gorgeous. I think they're in that book We Can Be Heroes. So it's funny, I think we've reconnected, another Facebook thing. Yep, I just went around and took pictures of what was going on, basically. People dancing. It was a whole other way of dancing too. And it was that whole Spandau thing, and you know, it was just a whole different, you know, this whole military look that was going on. It's a great look. Yeah, it was a whole revolution, and the Blitz Club was the place to be at the time. So it was another document